HARBRO, The Finding of Sam Holbert, by Tyrone G. Sawyer. He who findeth his life shall lose it, and he who loseth his life for my sake shall find it. Matthew 10:39, King James Bible. Elizabeth realizes Sam slept soundly in his crib, as one would expect a newborn to do. It was moments after his birth, on 9th January 1956, in the quaint Bahamian out-island settlement of Dunmore Town, Harbour Island. His mother, Elizabeth, lay in the bed, thinking, coming to grips as best she could with what had just happened. Her, giving birth to Sam, as a 19-year-old single mother, thinking about the repercussions that it wrought, for her and for Sam. Thinking about how she would be treated. She would be treated differently than she was before. No question. Harbour Island society was very judgmental and slow to forgive when norms were broken, but there was nothing that she could do, other than forge her way forward, which is what she resolved to do. Sam, for his part, was totally oblivious to the confluence of events which was hard to reconcile. He slept like the baby he was. Elizabeth's concerns were grown-up, adult concerns. She hoped that Sam would grow up to see and understand how the many threads of her life were woven together, to result in his birth, to inform his prospects for a good life, which she would do everything in her power to make sure he achieved. Elizabeth thought random thoughts, like how the marriage of her parents in Bimini almost did not take place, about her own visit to Bimini 9 months earlier, which turned out to be so consequential. That thought, she realized, was not random at all. Bimini, the fishing capital of the world, a powerful spearhead of the country's explosive tourism growth, a small island which loomed large in Elizabeth's family's history. She found herself thinking about the day she departed Harbour Island for Nassau on the mailboat MV Gary Roberts, the first leg of her trip to Bimini. Elizabeth embraced her parents, Commissioner Samuel and Ruth Johnson, on the government dock and walked up the gangplank. She looked radiant in her light yellow cotton dress, which clung to her waist and flared out in pleats, the hem stopping just below her knees. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat to keep the sun at bay. She wore sensible leather-strapped sandals with rubber-soled shoes. Elizabeth carried herself modestly, which did not preclude the open and furtive glances that she attracted from the men on board the MV Gary Roberts. Nobody openly ogled her. They tried to stay within the bounds of propriety. Elizabeth was not coy, nor was she attention-seeking. She was very much aware of the impact she had on men. She had begun to experience it for a while. She took it all in stride. She had the aura of a 25-year-old woman, well beyond her 18 years. Her firm calves were exposed. She was in great physical shape, from swimming every day, on Harbour Island's pink sand beach with its occasional ocean waves, from plaiting fish pots made of wire with her father, Samuel, from helping him to build boats on the Harbour Island waterfront in his spare time. He treated Elizabeth like the son he never had. Her eyes casted along the waterfront, dominated by familiar white picket fences and colonial rental cottages. Then they landed on Robert Albury, her erstwhile boyfriend. Robert had just arrived on the dock out of breath, riding his bicycle. She waved at him and smiled. Then, seeing him caused Elizabeth's spirit to shift. She became more contemplative as she considered what he had done. Robert had gone to meet with her father a few days earlier to request her hand in marriage, without consulting her. It was an unforgivable offence. "2 men bargaining over me like a piece of meat. How dare you?" she shouted. Elizabeth's anger was exacerbated by Robert's sense of entitlement. As she considered it, he had always been that way, but she was looking at him in a different light. She and Robert had grown up together. Their families picnicked together, almost religiously, on public holidays. Elizabeth don't know when, but it had become a foregone conclusion that she and Robert would marry. He certainly felt so. She noticed over time how he imitated her father's mannerisms. But he did so without understanding her father. the humility that he possessed under his gruff exterior, or the way that he took pleasure in letting her mother lead. Now, it all came to a head. Robert's take-charge facade cracked, like a crate of eggs that slipped and fell to the ground. Elizabeth, I did not mean it that way, he stammered. That was the moment of truth in their relationship. Robert had shown her who he was. After taking such an audacious step, she expected him, at the very least, to own what he did. It would have made for a robust reckoning between them. She would have respected that move, despite her anger and sense of betrayal. Instead, he folded, like a wet rag. He begged her to reconsider her decision to void their engagement. She was moved with pity to agree. Elizabeth was in an untenable position, which was hard to navigate. She had to figure out how to disentangle herself from the relationship while protecting Robert's feelings and his reputation in the community. It was unfair to her, but the other option was to go along to meet other people's expectations, when her heart was not in it. She had to be fair to Robert, too. Elizabeth realized that she had to face an equally important truth. She could not build a life with a man who could not stand up for himself. Little did she know, but events would quickly intervene to change the entire trajectory of her life. Elizabeth waved goodbye to her parents, who stayed rooted in place on the government dock in Dunmore Town, Harbour Island, until the MV Gary Roberts pulled away from the dock and navigated away from the shallow water. Before heading north, past Man Island, Jacob Island, and Pierre Island, skirting towards the shore around the Devil's Backbone Reef, towards Spanish Wells. From her perch on the mailboat, Elizabeth saw the tears welling up in her father's eyes. She knew she was loved. She watched as her mother gently nudged him, and then put her arms around his waist, leaning her face into his chest. After 20 years of marriage, she realized that they still had much love and affection for each other. HARBRO, The Finding of Sam Holbert, by Tyrone G. Sawyer. On sale now in paperback and Kindle and hardcover at Amazon.com.